Hi there and welcome to another episode of A Minute to Midnight. Hi, I'm Chris.
And this is Tony.
How you doing, Tony?
Yeah, good there, Chris. And it's the long-awaited and anticipated month of September 2015. We're here, Chris.
We're here. It's that time of the Jewish Shemitah.
Yes, it is. Yep.
That 7-year period. Another 7 years since the last 7 where there was disaster.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And September 13th is the 29th of Elul, which is the day that many are predicting is, it's the Feast of Trumpets, and that could be the day of the collapse, except that it's a Sunday, so we'll have to wait and see where this begins.
That coincides with a visit from the Pope.
That's a little bit later in the month, and we'll get into that later in the show. What do
will.
you got there, Chris, on news?
News, we've had quite a bit of news since our last episode. There's a lot of news that have sort of gone by the wayside. There's been another explosion in China.
That brings us to 4 of them in China now in a month.
Yeah, I'm not sure on casualties if there were any this time, but it was another chemical plant.
Yeah, it's getting beyond coincidence now, and I believe that there's a lot of evidence that the first big one in Tianjin was a nuclear device.
Really?
Yeah, won't go too much into that today, but I think if people search it out, they can find that there's a lot of experts that are saying it certainly appears to have been a nuclear weapon, whereas in our last show we thought it was a rod of God kinetic weapon, but perhaps it actually was a nuke. Don't know about these other ones, but there was also a explosion in Japan too, wasn't there?
There was. Was that the one on the airbase?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, US airbase had an explosion, but yeah, we didn't hear much more on that, did we?
No, but it's just way too many explosions. Plus there's been one in Russia and one in Texas, at least that I know of, all in a short space of time. Sort of shades of leading up to World War One. I think they had the same sort of thing. So we'll have to wait and watch and see what goes on from here.
So perhaps it's going to be World War Three.
Yeah, I think, well, it may have already begun, and, perhaps retaliation from the United States against China for some of their cyber warfare that they've done against America, and also the currency war. This could all be part and parcel of the beginning of war.
Yes, devaluation of the yuan. It's quite interesting too, the fact that these are taking place. They seem to be at night time.
The explosions, yeah, it is. It is. All of them have been at night, haven't they?
Yeah. So that in itself, it's gets you thinking, doesn't it?
I think it's way beyond coincidence that there's so many of them. And like I say, at least the first big one appears to have been a nuclear weapon. Don't know about the ones since, but watch this space and see how many more of them.
Yeah, there's been a lot of refugees sort of walking through Greece into Europe. I think Hungary's receiving a lot of. I read an article. I think it was about 3,000 people per day.
Wow, are they all hungry too?
Well, they will be. And what sort of pressure is that putting on their social system throughout Europe?
Yeah, well, I don't know, but it can't be a good and easy thing to deal with.
Yes, crime must go up. Certainly, the value of the euro will go down because they're going to be trying to get benefits, etc. So yeah, it's going to have a vast impact overall in Europe, don't you think?
Yeah, could well do, Chris. It's certainly another thing that's happening. So what's been going on in the stock market?
Stock markets, they've been pretty choppy. We've been seeing some ups and downs, volatility in the markets since we last aired. Now, just in the last day, we've had the Dow Jones has gone down a further 2.84%, and that's been pretty rickety over the last 10 days or so. I think they've had about two pluses in those in those trading days. Rest all been in the negative territory. So yeah, down 2.8% overnight. That's about 469 percentage points, that's quite a lot for the Dow Jones index. In Japan, the Nikkei's down. Sorry, it's up 0.46%, and that's about the only one that's up today. The Hong Kong was down 1.827 since we last looked. The London Stock Exchange finished the night at negative 3.13. In Germany, the DAX was down 2.38%. Shanghai's down today at 1.2% so far. And of course, yesterday it sparked quite a a negative route throughout all the markets, and there was a sea of red. It says, investors say when there's blood in the streets, that's when you sort of get in on into the market. I wouldn't suggest that now. Yes, it's red all over the board, and that represents blood in the streets, but I think there's a lot more blood to come. There's been a few individual stocks that have gone down of note. One being Apple was down 4.47%, and that's been going down over the last wee while as well. So individual stocks are going down. The stock markets are, you wouldn't want to be in there.
No, and I'm going to explain in a minute why I believe this is a controlled demolition of the stock market.
Locally, the New Zealand exchange is down 1.39% today, and the Australian is down 1.2%. So they're seeing further decreases. Australia's sort of getting a lot of warnings there now. I mean, their mining industry's in tatters, and of course now their share markets are falling too. We had one positive thing happen for our market overnight, and that is that the dairy prices went up 10.9%, but that's been positive news out of a lot of gloomy news.
That's for New Zealand, positive.
That's for New Zealand. In the last 10 pricing auctions on the dairy, in the dairy industry, 2 out of 10 have been positive, and this being one of them.
Right.
Now that hasn't shown any given any positivity in our currency market. Our dollar hasn't gone up; it's actually gone down on that news. And then if we come to the commodity sector, gold has gained overnight, but oil has had a significant drop. So a lot of the industries to be wary of it when you're buying stocks or commodities. You need to be aware of the oil industry at the moment, and you need to be aware of the banking sector and a lot of retail stocks. And of course, stocks like Apple, you've got to be very wary of. Gold and silver, once again, you probably be all right if you're in the share market to do your due diligence and start dipping your toes in the water there. But apart from that, I'd probably be keeping out of the share market altogether.
Right. Well, I've got some stuff here to do with the stock market and why I believe it's a controlled demolition of the stock market. That this is not happening by chance. I believe the Illuminati's hand is all over this. That they're deliberately crashing it. This is part of their strategy to crash the global economy. Here's some interesting points, okay? On the 24th of August, it was sort of known as a Black Monday there in many ways. The stock market fell during the early part of that day, I think by about 1,000 points before it rebounded somewhat and ended up 600 points odd down by the end of the day. Okay? So when it closed, the actual figures at the close of the stock market were, listen to this, 15,666.44. That was what it closed at, okay? So 15. We think the Illuminati, everything they do, these are occultists, everything they do is done with numerology and has a numeric value to it. And they're showing us here, I believe, that they're in control of what's going on, or at least they believe they're in control. They think they're God. And I'll show you why. Okay? The 15, that is 2015. 666, we all know is the mark of the beast. Okay? And then 0.44. What does the 44 stand for? 44, there's a few different things here. Okay, Jeremiah chapter 44 speaks of judgment of the Jews living in Egypt. That's in the Bible, okay? I don't think that's what the Illuminati will be using, but it's interesting because God supersedes all of this. Okay, Obama is the 44th president of the United States, and it's really interesting on that one that way back there was a rabbi in Israel who said that this is well before Obama, by the way, that the 44th president of the United States would bring bloodshed to the Jewish people based on the Hebrew word for blood, dam, which has a numeric value of 44. And Vankin said before Barack Obama was elected the 44th president. So, and we know in September we're likely to see a deal recognising the state of Palestine. So that's another 44. But I believe the big one, the big 44 that the Illuminati would use, because they use this one a lot, is the Greek god Kronos, okay, who had 44 assistants according to Greek mythology. He was a serpentine god, okay, and was usually portrayed as an old wise man with a white beard, who we know is a personification of Father Time. And like I say, the Illuminati has used Kronos in a lot of their media stuff in the past. So it makes sense to me that that's what they're doing here, is saying, okay, that they're in control of the timing of this, or they believe they are. Another thing that's really interesting I find with those numbers, remember 15,666.44, is if you add the 15, and I've not seen anyone else come up with this conclusion. I actually lay in bed late one night and figured this out in the middle of the night when I should have been sleeping. Now, if you add those numbers up the way occultists like the Illuminati would with their numeric values, you would get 1 plus 5 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. That equals 24. On the other side of the dot, you have 4 plus 4, and that equals 8, or 24.8, or 24/8. 24th of the 8th, which is exactly the day that this occurred on. Okay, 15, that's 1 and 5 equals 6, plus 6 is 12, plus 6 is 18, plus 6 is 24. 24 of the 8th. I think that's way beyond coincidence here, that all of these numbers are lining up in that way. So to me, that just says that this is a sign that most people would not get, but those that are in the know, and the other occultists would know, that the Illuminati are signalling the control of this situation. I believe that they believe they're in control, but God is actually going to supersede their control of this whole situation. What do you think of that there, Chris?
Yeah, I reckon you could be onto something there, Tony. That's interesting. Some people may not have listened to you clearly enough then, and may come up with a number 32, but I'll just reiterate for you. What you're meaning is that the index was at 15,666.44.
That's right.
So it's those first 5 numbers add up to 24.
Yep.
-8.
Yes, that's the one. You've got it, Chris. So
right.
It's way beyond coincidence, don't you think, that those numbers should occur on that day?
Yes, I see where you're coming from. Interesting.
Somebody's controlling it, and I believe they're telling us that they're in control of the timing, and it's going to be when they want to start crashing it that it'll crash.
Okay, coming back to the 666, it's interesting that in the last few days there's been 3 Category 4 hurricanes going through the northern Pacific, and someone pointed out, can you remember who that was that pointed it out?
Oh, I saw Pastor T.D. Hale actually put it on his Facebook page, a NASA photo.
Yeah, and it showed them as 666, the cyclonical
space,
form of them was, looked
from
like
space, it looked
three
like 3
sixes,
sixes, yeah.
which is quite interesting.
Does that tell us again that it's not just a natural event? Perhaps somebody's using weather control techniques like HARP to direct these storms, because it's something like this has never happened before, apparently, in recorded history.
You might be getting some listeners listening to that one, Tony.
I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm right on that one, but perhaps it is. You know, that's another whole subject for another day.
Well, yeah.
I'll zip my lips.
But hey, that's a lot of power there going through the Pacific at one time, and what devastation that might cause. One of them I know is turned into a typhoon, so it's gone into the opposite time zone. So it's in the Asian territory. I read an article, and it's looking like it could stick around for another week or so, which would hit the likes of Japan, possibly the Philippines. and Hong Kong. So people will be watching that very closely.
Okay, that's excellent. And look, I'm just going to backtrack for a second. I just had another thought here, Chris. Sorry
Yes.
to interrupt the flow, but going back to that stock market thing, it was interesting that on the Thursday and the Friday before that Monday, the 24th, that there was a 2-day crash that was 888 points over 2 days. Now, if you add up those 3 eights, that also equals 24. Were they telling us that the 24th is going to be another crash? See, again, could they have manipulated the whole thing to be 888, another 24? Anyway, that's just an afterthought. And it seems to be this is a time we've all been anticipating is September for the beginning of this crash. A number of dates in September are potential, like the 29th of Elul, which we've mentioned on the 13th. But another date that keeps on coming up for various things is the 23rd of September. And I'm going to throw a few more interesting things out that might shock a few people here regarding the date of the 23rd of September, which has shown up in Hollywood productions like movies, in some cases subliminally, in other cases quite openly, for many years, going back to the 80s, etc. But, if you type 9, and you've got to do this exactly right, okay? You've got to put a 9, then a space, then 23, then 2015. If you put that into Google Maps, into the search, it will take you directly to CERN, CERN, okay? And I've tested that, and it's exactly what it does. But here's another thing. If you type Demon Portal into the Google Maps search engine, it also takes you directly to CERN. So we're talking the 9th, 23rd of September, basically, being tied in with CERN, which many people have said. Well, I've found out some other interesting things.
Before you go on, can you just give us, some of our listeners haven't heard of CERN?
Giant Hadron Collider, the biggest machine in the world, okay? It's 27 kilometres or 17 miles in circumference.
Yeah, that's the track it runs on, is that right?
Yeah.
It's like a worm under the ground.
Yeah, it's huge, and it runs through parts of Switzerland and France. But basically, they're doing scientific experiments to discover the God particle, etc. But really, what they're attempting to do is get into another dimension, and the CEO of CERN has basically said that. Okay?
So that should be a concern of ours.
A big concern there, Chris. Yeah, well, the CERN logo actually looks like 3 sixes, like a 666, and they have a mascot which is Shiva, the god of destruction. Revelation 9, 2 and 3 have some interesting things to say here, and I'll explain why. Have you got Revelation 9, 2 and 3 there, Chris?
He opened the shaft of the abyss, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth.
Okay, so that's Revelation 9, 2 and 3, right? So there we have again 9:23, okay? Now, it's interesting to note here that the word for abyss that is used in Revelation there is actually the word abusos. And do you know what the numeric value of that word is, Chris?
923.
It is, exactly. Now, what's the odds of that? 923 on the 9th, on Revelation 9, 2 and 3, and with the whole CERN thing and the bottomless pit, because many people are saying that they believe CERN may be actually unlocking that bottomless pit from which, in Revelation, that Abaddon or Apollyon is going to rise from that. And interestingly, the town in France where CERN is located was originally called Apolliacum and was named after the god Apollo, because the residents or those living there believed that it was a gateway to the underworld. Sergio Bertolucci, who is Director for Research and Scientific Computing at CERN, briefed reporters at one stage and said this: "Out of this door might come something, or we might send something through it." So they're looking into another dimension to try and bring something out of that other dimension, and they're doing it at a location that was originally called a polyacum. So could this be that it's where the bottomless pit is located, or at least could it be what the elite Illuminati scientists and occultists believe? Could they be actually going to unlock that door? So that's either a whole lot of massive coincidences, or they are more than a coincidence.
So that's happening on the 23rd of the 9th.
Yes. Well, according to Google Maps, it's leading us to CERN. And also another thing that's happening on the 23rd of the 9th is...
Oh, the Pope's visitation.
Yes.
To the US.
Yes, Chris. The Pope is... The 266th Pope is arriving in America on the 266th day of the year. And 266, by the way, is the average day for the gestation for a human being, okay, for a baby to be born. So the Pope's arriving on that 23rd in America.
And then, over the following few days, he's there. He'll be addressing Congress and the UN, and he'll be talking about the final version of the draft post-2015 development agenda, and it's titled Transforming Our World. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development will be delivered in September, and he'll be also addressing the 69th United Nations General Assembly, and will take action on the informally agreed document and is expected to recommend it for adoption by heads of state and government at the UN Summit on the post-2015 Development Agenda, which will convene in New York on the 25th and 27th of September 2015.
Yeah, and this current Jesuit Pope has repeatedly spoken of the need for reforms in the global economy, and he's also an outspoken advocate on the supposed need for man to avert the catastrophe of climate change, which is a massive part of this Agenda 2030. The Pope chose John Schellnhuber to be one of his advisors. He's the director of Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact and sees mankind kind of like some sort of an infection on Mother Earth. And the Pope chose him as one of his advisors when he wrote up his encyclical. And this is kind of how Schellnhuber would visualize his idea of a great transformation into world government, calling for an Earth Constitution, a global council, and a planetary court. The planetary court would be a large transnational legal body open to appeals from everyone with respect to violations of the Earth Constitution. Basically, it's a global government, a step towards global government and the control of resources, and it'll affect everyone because in the industrialised world, the majority of people believe that climate change is the greatest threat to humanity because that's what Al Gore and a bunch of other people have been telling us for years. So people have bought into this climate change being our greatest threat lie, I believe, hoax. And all forms of human activity produce carbon emissions or in some way affect the environment. So Pope Francis and his global government idea, along with the UN's Agenda 2030, will give more control to the elites who want to control every aspect of our lives and push for population reduction. Under the guise of saving humanity or saving the planet, they brainwash the masses with this fraudulent global warming or climate change propaganda. But in the end, it's all about accomplishing the elite's goal of giving themselves more power and control through global governments. They want to control everything we do. And I believe that's what this is really all about, but they doctor it up with a whole lot of flowery language like trying to reduce poverty and etc., etc. But really when it comes to it, it's about controlling us. And just actually another interesting aside, which goes back to the 44, by the way, the Vatican, of which, of course, the Pope is the head, is actually 44 hectares as well.
Oh.
And we know Pope Francis basically has a very socialist outlook. In fact, on a visit to South America, the Bolivian President Evo Morales actually presented Pope Francis with what I believe is a huge blasphemous thing, Jesus crucified on a hammer and sickle. Now, if the Pope was if the Pope was a genuine Christian, he would not have accepted it, but he did. He accepted that.
I wonder too if any of this that comes up, like with the UN and the Congress, will he bringing out the likes of a one world religious system as well?
Oh, I think that's definitely going to be a part of it. But they increment this thing in stages. But I actually suspect that this is all timed, and Pope Francis's address will be when the world's beginning to panic over the economic crisis that's I think will have already begun.
So he'll be bringing possibly ushering in a new currency system, perhaps.
Possibly, don't know, or certainly laying the groundwork for it anyway.
Well, let's watch out, September, eh?
It's here, yep. Also, we shouldn't forget that Pope Francis is a Jesuit, and in fact is the first Jesuit Pope. A former Jesuit by the name of Malachi Martin, who wrote a book some years ago, suggested that he believed the Jesuits' goal was to control the Vatican, to seize control of the Vatican and basically use it as a machine to bring in the New World Order. So having a Jesuit Pope certainly signals the fact that they've actually perhaps succeeded in their goal of putting their man in power for the times such as this. So there's a few of the things to be looking for in September, and keep your eyes peeled. Carry on, Chris.
Okay. I just want to share a passage of scripture that I've been sort of reflecting on, and I'd like I don't want to say it out of context because it's not, you're not meant to do that, but the Lord's giving me a verse today, and it's just I just can't get it out of my mind, and it's from the book of John, chapter 9, verse 4, which says, "As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work." Now, Jesus spoke that at a time when he was talking to the Pharisees, the Pharisaical mob, if you like, of the time, and he was doing healing on the Sabbath. And but I can't get this particular passage of scripture out of my mind, as I've said today. And to me, it's sort of saying, we are living in the day at the moment, but night is coming. And when night comes, there won't be anybody at work. For me, it could be God could be saying, particularly to me, but I'm just putting it out there. Is that all right, Tony?
Yeah, go for it, Chris. Yeah.
That, hey, there is a night coming. We've had these crashes in the last couple of weeks, or a crash, but it's not the big one. I believe the big one's coming, and we just want to once again just reiterate that we need to be prepared. Since we've done this, the last broadcast, there doesn't appear to have been a lot on the surface happening, but there is a lot under the surface. We've talked about a few things that have been going on, but I believe it's a bit like a crater lake, and it's bubbling on the surface, but it's not a true reflection of what's coming underneath and ready for an eruption. So I just think it's a time to be vigilant, that we need to not rest on our laurels, if you like. We've got to use discernment in these times, and we can't be complacent at all. So we need to be prepared, and of course we keep saying in our broadcasts there's three things to be prepared with. Firstly, is having your spiritual life in order, and that is having a relationship with God through his Son Jesus Christ. Secondly, is have your food and shelter sorted. Start stocking up on food. Here in our country, we've got so much, we've got plenty, but we don't know what it's like. It's been 3 or 4 generations down the line where we don't know what it's like to not have anything. Particularly the last 1.5 generations have not seen what can happen in an economic meltdown or in a depression, if you like. So it pays to be ready. Just as Noah was asked before he built the ark to build it, and he got ready for that. Look at it like that. Be as Noah, because the word says that, as in the days of Noah, these things will come. And in the days of Noah, a lot of stuff is happening today, which are a reflection from there. So take this as a warning. Prepare. Be ready. And get your life sorted. Get your food and water sorted out at home. And then last of all, if you can, get some treasury. Get something in your treasury. If you've got enough money there, start buying some silver. And if you can, gold, for what lies ahead.
Getting pretty hard, though, to get that stuff. Gold and silver, it seems very tight now.
Yeah, it is in bigger quantities. You can still buy smaller quantity gold and silver, but yeah, you are right, Tony. In particular, silver's getting pretty tight, but you can still get it.
Okay.
Oh, well, once again, it's been an interesting show, and it's interesting to see what lies ahead over the next week or two. Watch the space, people. As I've said already before, be discerning. We need to be concerning too regarding CERN and everything else that we've looked at today. But yeah, in particular, don't rest on your laurels. Don't be complacent. It's a time to be watchful. It's a time to prepare. We just want to say a thank you to those who have subscribed to our channel over the recent weeks that we've been broadcasting. It's great to get feedback from you all. And we just thank all of you listeners, and we look forward to future episodes with you.
And we thanks for your emails too.
So it's goodbye from me, Chris,
and from Tony, and catch you in our next broadcast.